because this post is about narcissism. And before you roll your eyes and go, oh, great, another discussion about, narcissistic vanity, let's just clarify something. The term narcissism gets thrown around a lot. Narcissism is used to describe just self-absorption, about vanity, but that's not the whole story, is it? Because narcissism, it's a deep psychological wound that can't just be diagnosed with a few observations of narcissistic traits. Like, we can't diagnose a sinus infection just based on a couple sneezes. Because narcissism isn't just about, occasional mirror gazing or thinking that you look good in a photo. Because narcissism is you are or you're not. And what makes narcissism even more complex is that narcissism itself is a spectrum. And at some point, we're all on the spectrum. So it's important to note that, there is a difference between just casual vanity and everyday self-love and full-fledged narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD. There's no such thing as just a little bit pregnant here. And because narcissism exists on like a spectrum, becomes like a vast landscape where traits and tendencies all have different kinds of shades. And with narcissism, there is a darker canvas that's at play here. Because NPD is not your run-of-the-mill, ego trip. It's not the run-of-the-mill little occasional vanity. NPD is far more complex, far darker. Because these narcissistic behaviors go beyond just the occasional pep talk in the mirror. And narcissists have a way of just chipping away at relationships. And the people that are involved in these relationships end up enduring, having their self-esteem, their dignity, their integrity. Everything that makes us gets deteriorated and chipped away at. So just the act of loving yourself isn't the same as becoming just this vortex of narcissistic manipulation about control and self-absorption. And there's a difference between narcissism and narcissistic traits. It's like confusing a water pistol with a fire hose. One is playful, and the other is just a force of nature. Because when we're talking about the disorder, it's more about what these narcissistic traits do to other people. And this is where we realize that you're not the mirror to a narcissist to reflect back their ego identity. Because the truth is like you are an independent, autonomous human being. Because you're not the narcissist plaything, and have a sense of high self-worth and dignity and value. Something that you don't give up in order to people please a narcissist that can never be pleased anyway. Now, abusive narcissists have sometimes been cast as just mere characters in the theater of popular culture, but their complexity is reduced to nothing more than just a casual remark, not fully or completely understanding the deep psychological effects that this form of abusive narcissist can do. And when narcissism is just used, too casually, what ends up happening is we end up downplaying the term itself. It's like describing a hurricane as just a gentle breeze. And what that does, it actually undermines the havoc that, abusive narcissists actually create. Because you can't just be there going, here I am in this narcissistic breeze, and then suddenly, wow, the roof of that house just blew off. And what do you know? There's a pickup truck flying through the air. Oh, I don't see that every day. It's not a gentle breeze. Like it's total chaos and destruction of people's lives. And an important thing to remember is that understanding the narcissism isn't just confined to self-absorption. That becomes really, really important. There's a grandeur in this narcissistic symphony that's at play. And this symphony, it often leads victims into this dance with the dark forces of this manipulation and just psychological control. And it's important that we recognize these distinctions, these little finer strokes of narcissistic behaviors, because that's the first step in shining a light into the true complexity of this disorder. And this leads us into a darker side that leads into just a full-blown narcissistic personality disorder. And trust me, you don't want to get involved with something like that. So picture this, a person that's just high on the narcissistic spectrum, they can be more vicious and more relentless than the worst horror movie creature that you could ever imagine. And here's the thing about narcissists is they've just mastered the art of deceit. They're like grandmasters at it. And we're not talking about people with traits of narcissism. We're talking about people that are just full-blown NPD. Those are just sky high on the narcissistic spectrum. Because we're talking about people that are just kind of hit the demonic level of NPD. And at the core of it, what they lack is empathy. And if you look into their minds, they just don't see empathy as a trait that's necessary for their survival. For them, it's just like empathy is just outdated. It's kind of like, the Reebok pump or, wanting to buy a new tractor for your farm on Farmville. It's just not something that's important to them. And what you'll find is just enduring just long-term abuse from these narcissistic partners, it's a lot like being in a horror movie marathon. But what happens is like every film that just kind of plays throughout this marathon is this psychological thriller. And the main character of this thriller is your brain, your identity, your sense of worth. You can almost imagine the mind as just like a castle that's under this narcissistic siege. And then prolonged abuse by someone who treats empathy as just like a foreign concept can lead victims to, trauma traits. Things like, PTSD or narcissistic victim syndrome. And when our brains kind of get traumatized, what the brain does is it actually replays all those horrific memories, kind of just on a loop. It's kind of like you got all these windows open and there's a horror film playing in one of the tabs, and you can hear it and you can hear it, but you don't know which tab it's coming from. And it just ends up playing itself again and again. And these traumas, they continue to hurt the victims, even after the relationship has ended, even after they're safe. Because we were once in danger, our mind thinks that there's danger everywhere. And we missed it then, so we better be on high alert, hypervigilance right now. Because we never know when the next narcissist is going to come by, or when the previous narcissist is going to come back at. And narcissists, they love targeting sensitive people. And to a narcissist, an empath, it's almost like, ice cream on a hot day. It's just empaths just don't stand a chance. The narcissists, they zero in on empaths, spinning their sensitivity as a flaw. It ends up becoming like, blaming a thermometer for the heat. And victims of narcissism are constantly being told that, they're being too sensitive. It's as if, reacting to, verbal jabs and emotional shrapnel is, overdoing it. It's like being in a boxing ring with a narcissist and then being punched and then being told you're being too sensitive to pain. But remember, it's normal, it's human even to be sensitive to narcissistic abuse and manipulation. And the truth is, our empathetic nature isn't a weakness as narcissists want us to believe. It ends up being a strength that's just being exploited. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. We end up seeing that this is a distorted reality that's just tailor-made by a narcissist. And yeah, sure, victims of narcissists are left, doubting everything, even their own emotions. It's like living in a funhouse, mirror maze, where every reflection is just warped by some narcissistic clown. There is light at the end of this narcissistic tunnel. And understanding these tactics, this is your key to freedom. Because it's not just about escaping the manipulation, it's about lighting your own torch. And recognizing that narcissistic manipulation is not the end. It's the beginning of reclaiming your reality. And by seeing narcissistic tactics for what they are, you start to regain your control. And we find that the journey out of narcissism is one that goes from confusion to clarity. And what we find is by educating ourselves and learning about narcissism, it isn't just about knowledge, it's about power. The power to, validate your own experiences and trust your own feelings, to reclaim your own life, your own narrative. And sure, yeah, we did step into that narcissistic trap. We did fall into that darkness. That's one thing, yes. And it's okay, because that can happen to anyone. It can happen to even me. But what's not okay is staying in this narcissistic darkness. Hoping, praying that the narcissist will somehow get better. Because the narcissist hurts, they don't say. And seeing that is where we can turn this darkness of narcissism into just a light. And what happens when you turn on the light in a dark room? What happens to the cockroaches? That's right, they scatter. Poof. Because that's the recovery process. It's not about fear and the manipulation that kind of controls is hoping that somebody else is going to save us when actually it's us turning on our own lights. Instead of looking outward into the world, trying to manage things that we can't manage, what we do is we turn the insights back inwards. We remember who we were. And yeah, narcissists live in that world where they can control everything. What they can't control is what's inside. And if we can kind of do that, if we can kind of take all that empathy and that compassion that we're so freely giving to others, we can just kind of turn that attention and turn that focus inwards and see what exactly do we need? What do we need to hear? What do we need to feel? What do we need to do to recover from this? That becomes the changing point. That's that aha moment where we leave the narcissist and we go back into finding who we are actually. That's where we realize who we are. Because the you that's after narcissism is a powerful you. It's an unbreakable you. It's an unshakable you. Because if you can survive narcissism, there's really not much else in this world that's going to ever hold you back. Ever again. Too many people keep their narcissistic experiences, to themselves. And talking about it can help you get over it faster, just like it did for me. It took me 3 people and my own family doctor to tell me I was in a narcissistic relationship before I believed them. Let me introduce myself. My name is Miles, and I'm a hypnotherapist and a recovery coach. And my specialty is helping people recover from, the abuse and trauma from narcissistic entanglement, and to guide them to the other side, to live fulfilling, rich lives and meaningful lives, after narcissistic abuse. And I'd like to help you if I can. You can find more information on my recovery program and my courses at narcovery.com, or just send me a message here.